Well, hello, and thank you very much for looking at the Strong Children Project pictures. I really appreciate it. It's important that we think about the situation of families who are still living in Fukushima and those families who've left. And people are already arguing about the effects of the nuclear disaster on children who were living in Fukushima at the time and who are still living there. So for me, it's very important that those children are at the centre and that we think about them as real individual people. And that was my intention in making and working with the children and making their portraits. The children that I met in the project were just great. It was a pleasure and a joy to work with them. They had such a lot of interesting thoughts and just different feelings, and it's all too easy to project our own fears and feelings and thoughts onto children. We do it all the time, but clearly they were their own people, and there was a huge range there, from obviously fear of radiation and anger about Fukushima Daiichi, and tremendous sadness that their lives had changed and that they, for example, weren't able to play football outside anymore, and that their parents were concerned, and they were just grieving the loss of play in their lives, which is quite a big theme. But not just that, there was tremendous thinking about what the future should be. So imagining a future with a strong emphasis on the environment and thinking about clean renewable power was a very strong theme, and people had such great ways of showing that. I particularly like the very complex multiple source electricity system that one girl devised, which included lightning power, which seemed like it might be slightly risky, but it was very good to see. And that some of them was just simply being children. It's important to remember that the children are just children, and they were thinking about what their future would be. I want to do this in the future, or just expressing what they love, and their pleasure in things. Perhaps I can tell you a little bit about how I did the artwork. I work collaboratively, which means that I try and make it a meeting between me as an artist and the person I'm working with, in this case the child, as an artist. And we think about what is it they want to express, and they design an image. So the children did a rough drawing of what they would like to do, and they thought about how they would appear in the picture. So they would decide on what colour they would be, what pose they would be, they would use, and what their facial expression should be, and maybe different clothing and so on. And of course, with the drawing, anything is possible. So they could be leaping, flying, relaxing, playing. They can do anything. They don't have, and they can be dressed in. I can draw them in clothes that they're not wearing. And after they'd done the rough drawing, I would check it to make sure that it would work. And once I understood what they were trying to do, maybe help them to choose materials, and then they would I would draw them first according to their instruction, and they would draw around it, or they would make their drawing first, and then I would draw into that. But all the time checking with them that was right. One of the purposes of the project is that the drawing is just the starting point, and really the idea is to communicate with the rest of the world, and the idea is to, in the case of Fukushima's children, to make people realise that this has actually really happened, and it's happened to real individual children, and to see them as unique as all children are, and for the children to know that people around the world are seeing their artwork, I hope will give them a sense that they matter, of course, and also that their situation might change, and that they can actually take a little bit of power in trying to affect the world and changing the world. so that they're not just an individual person, perhaps in the countryside in Fukushima or in a town somewhere. They're actually connected in with the rest of the world, because the rest of the world does need to think about issues about our energy future, and we really need to listen to what Fukushima's children are thinking about that issue. To ignore it seems absurd. So, and then I hope, of course, that when people around the world have seen the children's pictures, and I hope that some of that will come back and help improve their situation. For example, obviously it would be important that more children and more families are enabled to leave if they want to leave Fukushima, and be supported to do that properly, which is not, there's been some support from the different prefectural governments, but not nearly as much as there could be. For example, not as much as would have happened in wartime to evacuate children from an area at risk of bombing. Clearly, that's not happened. So I hope that the pictures will in some way help the child's practical situation, and also just their feeling and their thinking, to have confidence to think, yeah, I can communicate, I can affect my situation, I can comment on what's happened to me to help other people's situation. So it's a kind of a circle, a very positive circle that goes around. And that's very important. It isn't just a picture, it's a very positive circle of action.